Billy, great to see you. Welcome to Popternative.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
I'm really excited to chat with you about Kid Snow. It's interesting with movies that have to do with sports because you can look at it at two different ways, right? You could look at it as a movie about self-reflection, figuring things out that has boxing and sports in it, or you could
Sure.
look at it as like a boxing movie that has like other things in it. How did it read
Right,
for
right,
you
right.
specifically? I find that interesting, right?
Yeah, no, it is interesting. Yeah, and I think it's something that we're sort of aware of right from the get-go, from the beginning of the projects. I mean, even almost certainly within the writing process itself, I think I knew, having read the scripts, or I was beginning to understand, what the movie was trying to do, and it is an interesting kind of discussion,
Mhm.
between those two things, and what do we expect from a successful boxing film or a sports film,
Mhm.
and then what do we expect from a sort of family drama containing romance and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and I guess I'd argue that it has to have both to be a successful anything.
Yeah.
You know, yeah,
And it's interesting too, right? Because I feel like, it's all storytelling at the end of the day, but there's always going to be different things you have to do for roles and everything. I feel like for this one, it's twofold for you, right? Because it's like, you're going back in time for a role, you're going back to the 70s. So that's
yeah.
always interesting from a preparation mindset perspective. But then there's the boxing. Maybe you were familiar with it a bit. There's the training component. So what was that like? Like, was this really a cool experience for you trying new things from an acting perspective as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's one of my favorite parts of the job, is to be able to learn these new skills. I was fortunate in that I'd done a bit of boxing before, but
Okay.
I wasn't. It's not something I did regularly. So yeah, I had to have a sort of intensive period of about 6 months, maybe a bit more, leading up to shooting. And then there was quite a big shift when I arrived in Australia in Perth. I continued training with another trainer, a guy called Big Rig, who trains professional fighters, and lots of things changed.
Mhm.
So it's interesting that the language of boxing, differs kind of greatly from kind of training in London with, a trainer who trains professional fighters, to another one in Perth, and the language they were talking was different. So there was like quite a few adjustments to be made. Some of the things that I was learning about sort of anachronisms in boxing, because certain things didn't exist in the 1970s, especially not in the outback of Australia.
Mhm.
So yeah, it was fascinating getting a schooling in the history of boxing, especially tent boxing, which is a very like specific world, which I knew next to nothing about before researching the film. So
Mhm.
yeah, it was great.
The film premieres at the Sydney Film Festival in Australia, and then kind of like now North America, people are going to be able to see it and everything. As an actor, you go in, you do your thing, you rap, you play that waiting game. Is it an interesting feeling? Is it a weird feeling for at some point it becomes out of your hands and then the world gets to see something you made of? Like, do you think about that at all?
I mean, I suppose I try not to, because I
I think
think,
it's smart not to.
yeah, you have to kind of be resigned to the fact that it is out of your control. You have to relinquish it in a way.
Mhm.
But what's important to me is I've sort of encapsulated that period of time in my head, the memory I have of making the film, why it's important to me, and what I hope people take from watching the movie, are sort of two different things.
Yeah.
But those are the things I think about, because I think those are the things that are important in making a movie. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, right? Because we talked about the beginning of you talked about the boxing component of it, which was awesome. You had some training and you knew a bit about it before. Um, when you get this script and you see these characters that just are lost and figuring things out and doing self-reflection, right? I'm wondering from an acting perspective, do you find it more challenging or more fun to play these lost characters? Because from the viewer perspective, they don't know they're lost, right? So I find that very interesting. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. What do I take? I mean, I suppose my take on that is that on some level, most people are lost
Yeah.
in some sense.
Yeah.
So actually, as a way into a person, I think I'm very wary of anyone who's dead set on something or is certain of something, because it doesn't matter what corner you turn, there's always a whole plethora of new questions about the world and our existence and all of that stuff. So I mean, that's way more interesting to me. I don't know if that's answering your question,
It
but it's
does,
way more interesting.
absolutely.
Yeah, as a way into a character, I think. Yeah, what are their hopes, dreams, desires? Do they have any? And if they don't, why not?
Yeah.
And I think that was definitely something I thought about with Kid, because there is a sort of resignation. You know, we eventually we sort of settle with what we have. We don't try to find a way out. But that question about is there a way out never goes away.
Absolutely. You are amazing in this film. Tom Bateman is amazing in this film. Phoebe Tonkin is amazing in this film. This cast is incredible. So I just kind of wanted to know, like, what was that like? And like, when do you find out you're working with some incredible storytellers like these two? Like, I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, I mean, and not to mention the rest, you know, Mark Cole Smith,
Yep.
Hunter Page Charge, Shaka Cook, Nathan Phillips.
Great cast.
Yeah, I mean, incredible. And yeah, what do I say? I think rehearsals speak for themselves. We had a quite intensive rehearsal period where we sort of built this world together. And it's often rehearsals are about negotiation, really.
Yeah.
We all come with a set of ideas. We all bring things to the table and then we go, hey, that's really interesting. I'd never thought of it that way. Then making micro adjustments the whole time to create something to tell this story. And you learn so much about who that person is, who that actor is, how they operate at that time. So you build a bond. It's sort of, I suppose, is like a shorthand. I think I've always thought it'd be interesting to return to that. I've never had that opportunity in a way, you know, to return to that, to work with that person again and see if that shorthand is still there, you know?
Yeah.
We're always, we're bouncing ideas off each other. I had a real education about Indigenous Australian history from the Indigenous contingent of the cast, you know? That was something that, I sort of don't take lightly. I feel very fortunate to have had that, for them to imbue me with a sense of what Australian history actually is.
Yep.
Yeah,
it's, you answered it perfectly. You're KOing these questions.
Thanks.
Boxing reference. It's all storytelling. You've had the opportunity to work with some incredible people on some incredible projects that are different worlds and different characters.
Yeah.
I'm curious if you, how separate are past projects compared to something like this? Like, do you ever bring mindsets or preparations from project to project? Like, do you bring things, I don't know, maybe, you know, you have like CHESIL Beach, Perfect Couple, Kid Snow. I don't know if those were filmed, you know, before Kid Snow or after, but it's like, do you bring things from project to project, mindset, preparation, or are they separate once you wrap them?
I think the preparation is super interesting because it is this amorphous, ever-changing thing, and it's often defined by what the project itself or what the character calls for, you know.
Yeah.
But I will learn something during the course of preparation for a specific character that may change the way I think about, for instance, how handling text or mining text or physicality or whatever it might be, any of those components. So all the time I'm learning new stuff about how to prepare for a role. So I think it's inevitable that I will take something from a particular preparation and in some way apply it to a different character. Yeah,
absolutely. I also wanted to know, because, you know, especially with indie film, because I'm a filmmaker myself, and there's something very powerful about, you know, working on a film with an amazing group of people that has one goal in mind, to make the best film possible, just put all the passion into something. And I feel like you have this with Kid Snow. And I'm wondering, so much happens before you go to camera on this project, right? There's a lot of discussions and preparation and the going back in time, the boxing. So from an acting storyteller perspective, Billy, you can see there's two journeys, right? Before filming Kid Snow and after filming Kid Snow. Does it feel like one big journey with multiple steps in between? I'm curious about that.
Oh, yeah. Does it feel like one big journey? I don't think so, because as I said, as a sort of an actor, you're always coming to the project really late in the process. Actually, it's right finally before you start filming, in a way, unless you're really lucky. But there is an acute awareness that the creatives working on this film, the production designer, Paul Goldman, John Brumpton, the writer, you know, I've been doing this. Is a 10-year passion project for John.
Yeah.
And then, you know, Paul joins it. It then becomes a 6-year project for him. The production designer, it is a real passion project because he's very interested in the peculiar part of Australian history. And so he's doing all this research for many, many years prior to filming. So as an actor, you turn up and hopefully, I think like Green actors, young actors, perhaps don't have this awareness. But when you do a film like this, you do become aware of those things, and you become aware of how much work, how much attention to detail has gone into this prior to you turning up. But then the really sad thing is, in a way, you kind of have to put it to bed because of what we were talking about earlier. And I suppose it would be because, you know, you are emotionally tied, I think, arguably should be emotionally tied to that project. Your memory of it, your memory of that character, I think it would be unhealthy to kind of like continue that on. So that's why I think talking to you so much later than when we filmed it, it's like 2 years plus, years ago, it's difficult.
Yeah,
it's
but
like,
I feel like it's almost impossible to continue, especially when you're all working on other projects as well. I always thought it was the weirdest thing too, when like when I started doing films, is like you're with, and it depends, right? Some shoots are long, like The Perfect Couple. I feel like that was a long shoot, right? Like that was probably, you were with those people for like a couple months, right? Specifically
4 months, I think.
Yeah, exactly. That's crazy, right? That's almost half a year. So it's like you're with the same people for like 4 months, and then the show wraps, and there's a chance that because everyone's on other journeys, you might not see these people ever again, right? It's like very odd to think about, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's a really odd part of the job. You have to have a very close tie to that person. I remember meeting the actress playing my mom. This is very early on in my career. The actress playing my mom in the car on the way to set to shoot this very intense scene. Involved the both of us, you know. And that's the first time I'd happy. It's the first time I was that my awareness was brought to that you have to create this whole world between you through the powers of acting. You know, alone, and then say goodbye to them and never see them again. And it is. It's odd.
It is. It's interesting. Following an incredible premiere at the Sydney Film Festival, the United States and the US, it's going to be available in theaters February 14th. That's Kid Snow, and I can't wait for people to check out your performance. Congratulations, Billy. So great chatting with you, man. Thank you so much for your time.
Too. That's all right. Pleasure.
Thank you for tuning in to Popternative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popternative on YouTube.
This has been an Autograph Communications production.